These are the Nazi elite, the SS. And this is a pagan religious ritual based on their twisted ideas.
The Nazi Party was not a political party the way we understand it. It was a cult, and you're being brainwashed into a cult.
We have to make sense of these belief systems. And how did the Nazis think? We have to get sort of into their heads.
That's an area that historians have not wanted to go. They don't want to go into the bowel of the beast.
The SS dreamed of recreating an ancient world where Aryan supermen wielded magical powers and lesser races were their slaves.
Herr Hitler!
Where pagan gods were worshipped with blood sacrifice and the power of the Holy Grail was harnessed to destroy the enemies of Adolf Hitler.
To us today, it sounds absolutely bizarre, but believe it, because people do believe in the unbelievable.
From their castle headquarters, the SS went in search of ancient supermen in Tibet for evidence of their ancestors' magical war weapons.
Achtung, grüßen!
That would prove they were the master race, and that their rightful destiny was to rule the world.
These were the people running one of the best military operations the world had ever known. And yet these were people who were psychotic. They didn't need scientific proof for what they believed in.
In 1933, Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party took power and spread its evil creed around the world. Now we can investigate its morbid beliefs as shown in the Nazi Gospels.
The Nazi Gospels justified spilling blood.
It's 1939, and in a castle in the heart of Hitler's Germany, an extraordinary ritual is taking place. This is an initiation ceremony into the fraternity of the SS, a ritual that embodies the Nazi Gospels, the belief system of a dark, new faith.
This is tantamount to a satanic ceremony, and at the same time it's liberating, because now you don't have to pay any attention to all of the religious rituals, all of the religious dogma you've been brought up with.
It's like tearing out the pages of the past and putting new ones in. And this is what the Nazi movement was all about.
The ritual is taking place by order of the commander of the SS, Heinrich Himmler.
Himmler's idea was to create a new cult, a new state religion. And the SS was going to be the priesthood of that religion. The SS was going to embody everything that they believed in as Nazis.
Standing before the altar is a young SS colonel, and next to him, an initiate into the Nazi cult. The pagan priest hands her a dagger, symbolizing her admission into the SS Brotherhood. Then they're given bread and salt, symbolizing the German race and fatherland, which the SS have vowed to protect. At the climax of the ceremony, they receive a copy of the Nazi Bible, written by the man who is both prophet and god of the Nazi cult, the Führer, Adolf Hitler.
Towering over the whole enterprise is Hitler, the new political messiah, the one who is going to save Germany.
Hitler had been master of Germany since the 30th of January 1933, when he became Chancellor of the Reich. If Hitler was the central icon of the Nazi cult, Heinrich Himmler was its high priest. Since before the Nazis' rise to power, he had commanded their elite protection squad, or Schutzstaffel, known to history by its initials, SS. Himmler was the editor-in-chief of the Nazi Gospels, And these are his words.
We must settle accounts with this Christianity, this greatest of plagues that could have happened to us in our history, which has weakened us in every conflict.
Himmler is an absolutely key player. He's the most powerful man after Hitler, really, in the Third Reich. And he creates the SS really as an elite.
For thousands of years, it has been the mission of this blonde race to rule the earth and again to bring it happiness and culture.
This SS ritual is a vital preparation for Himmler's ultimate dream of spreading his Nazi message around the world. This ceremony is a Nazi pagan wedding.
In contrast to the former state and the church, persons who want to marry are being advised and tested for suitability to marry and genetic health.
These two blonde, blue-eyed Germans embody Himmler's ideal racial type. Their marriage symbolizes the first and most important of the Nazi Gospels, the Gospel of the Master Race. It's the late 1800s. In Germany, this was a time of fascination with the occult.
This was the era of seances, when it became trendy for people to invite a medium over after dinner to contact the spirits of the dead.
Thousands of people joined secret societies.
People could get away from the rather stiff formality of Victorian drawing rooms and talk about the Orient, talk about Hindus, talk about fascinating feats of fakirs who could float in the air and things like that.
Interest in the occult reached epidemic proportions in the frenetic 1920s after the carnage of the First World War.
This sort of proliferation of secret societies existed not only in Germany, but in the United States, in Britain, other places in Europe.
In cities like New York and London, secret societies were fashionable and generally harmless. But not in Germany.
It got mixed up with an older tradition that was concerned with the German folk, or people. The German folk was, in a way, a mystical concept of what the people represented.
Across Germany and Austria, secret societies met to debate the question of the fundamental nature and origins of the German people. They concluded that the Germans were descended from an ancient race known as Aryans.
What defines the Aryan is really their look, their appearance, right? So they're strong, they're powerful, they're muscular, they are blonde, they are brave in battle.
It's kind of like a comic book. They're going to be superheroes, Superman.
The Aryan mythologists started to describe the new martial warrior type as some kind of blonde beast lusting for booty and prey.
Superheroes, blondish, strong, culture creators, a distinctly superior race.
But in reality, there has never been any such thing as an Aryan race. That didn't stop the Nazis inventing all kinds of myths about their so-called Aryan ancestors. Some bogus historians said they'd migrated into northern Europe from Tibet, or from Atlantis, the ancient city lost beneath the sea, or from a mysterious island called Tula.
Tula referred to an ancient Nordic paradise where the Aryan race was supposed to have, from which they were supposed to have descended. So this was a cold, snowy, icy heaven.
The cults idealized Tula as a Nordic equivalent of the biblical Garden of Eden described in Genesis.
Tula became almost the idea of a bastion of traditional values which could be rediscovered and then re-exported back into Germany and the modern world.
Germanic fantasies about the ancient Aryans became more and more bizarre, and ever more popular. One group even claimed that the Aryans were actually gods.
And suggested these gods had had extraordinary powers of telekinesis and telecommunication, thought transfer, all these things based on their godlike divine powers.
As the descendants of godlike ancient Aryans, the cultists believed that modern Germans could one day rediscover these divine powers.
The idea that there was within the human body a kind of bioelectric energy that could be found, that could be summoned through the proper initiations and the proper rituals. And that there were groups of humans who had the power over this sacred energy, and they could direct this energy as a weapon anywhere they liked. And then if you could just learn through rituals and through initiation how to control this power, you could become unstoppable. You wouldn't need regular weapons. You wouldn't need cannons. You wouldn't need guns or planes or even rockets. You could direct this energy at an enemy and destroy them.
Believers said the Aryans lost their godlike powers by committing a terrible sin.
Because of blood mixing, because of race mixing, because the Aryans, originally gods, had wickedly and foolishly mixed their blood with inferiors.
The cult members blamed race mixing for turning the Aryans into ordinary mortals. But they still placed Aryans at the top of the hierarchy of races, with all the other peoples of the world inferior to them.
I mean, the idea that you belong to a superior race, this is extremely seductive. And of course, it is very creepy.
Such views imply the existence of racial types who are a definite drag on the gene pool, definitely culture-destroying types, and the Jew belonged at the very bottom of that particular scale of being.
Both ends of this warped racist hierarchy, Aryan and Jew, were doomed to be locked in eternal conflict.
The fact that it sounds completely irrational doesn't mean we shouldn't take it seriously. I think that's very important, because these ideas were actually embraced by a lot of reasonable, you might say, Germans.
Europe in 1918. Germany was reeling from catastrophic defeat in the First World War. A humiliated people wandered as if in a dream into the 1920s, looking for spiritual answers, and sinister ideas crept into mainstream thought. Aryan cults grew fast, and in 1919, members of one of them launched a new political party. This new party grew rapidly. It called itself the National Socialist German Workers' Party, better known as the Nazi Party.
The Nazi Party inherited from these secret Aryan cults a key belief in the superiority of the Aryan race. The Aryans were the master race, and they had one vital, vicious enemy, the Jews. So this pairing, this idea of the Aryans and their shadow or double, the Jew, became a central part of Nazi ideology.
One of the party's first recruits was a 30-year-old ex-army corporal who, before the First World War, had been an unsuccessful artist in Vienna. Pathetic though he was as a painter, he quickly achieved the charisma and force to become the party leader, and he set the Nazis on a meteoric rise to power. His name was Adolf Hitler. Meet the SS elite, the toughest and most fanatical Nazis of them all. They were the backbone of Adolf Hitler's power, striking terror into all opponents. These crack SS troops were more than mere soldiers. They were priests who lived by the principles of the second Nazi gospel. This is the Teutoburg Forest, in the very heart of Germany. In 1933, The leader of the SS, Heinrich Himmler, came here looking for a spiritual home for the Nazi cult. He decided that a 500-year-old castle would be the perfect place. This was Wewelsburg.
The castle was in a state of disrepair, and repairs and renovations were put in hand. The plans for the northern tower were the most impressive and ambitious.
In the North Tower, Himmler constructed what he called the Hall of the SS Generals.
His idea was to create that as the Vatican, as the spiritual center of the Third Reich. That was going to be, as he called it, the middle point of the world. This was the axis on which the entire world would spin, would be this essentially creepy castle. You cannot imagine something more Dracula-esque.
The marble floor was inlaid with an intricate and mysterious pagan symbol, the Black Sun.
This black sun symbol could be identified with some kind of cosmic symbol, an exploding power from a center.
Below the hall, in the cellars, was a still more curious chamber, called the Gruft, meaning crypt.
When they died, Himmler's idea was that the SS officers would be cremated and their urns would be kept in the basement, in the lower floor at Wewelsburg, in special niches, 12 niches around the central location, so that people could go there and meditate and reconnect with the ashes and with the legacy of the SS, and through the SS back to the ancient kings of Germany.
The SS took root in the very early days of the Nazi Party. It was formed at the end of 1920. The Nazi Party was a political movement that began in 1919, in the chaos that followed Germany's catastrophic defeat in the First World War.
And the war was lost, right? There was an enormous financial crisis. And that leads to a complete breakdown of values, of beliefs.
The financial crisis of 1923 brought about massive hyperinflation. People's life savings were suddenly wiped out.
Their pensions have become worthless. They have to carry often, entire buckets full of money just to buy a loaf of bread and so on.
The Nazis blamed the nation's collapse in 1918 on a conspiracy by communists and Jews, and appealed to German national pride to rise up and fight it.
The Nazis gave Germans a good impression. They weren't like communists, disheveled, seedy-looking often, undisciplined. They were smart-looking.
Despising the compromises of their new democracy, the Weimar Republic, they promised a different and exciting regime with strong leadership and military glory.
So the Germans saw in this party almost anything that they wanted to see in it. This is the secret of its success.
To speed up their rise to power, the Nazis used violence. Gangs of trained thugs intimidated, beat up, and sometimes murdered political opponents. The most fanatical of these gangs was the SS, or Schutzstaffel, meaning protection squad. And the rising star of the SS was Heinrich Himmler.
In the year 1929, I was ordered by the Führer to take over the leadership of all SS units in the entire Reich, then 280 men in total, and to change them into a reliable, elite organization for the party.
Heinrich Himmler was born in 1900 into a lower middle-class family in the south of Germany.
Well, Himmler was not really the archetype of the Aryan Superman. He was not blonde, he was not tall, he was not strong. In fact, he was just the opposite of all of those things. He made up for that by being the kind of kid in the class who everybody fears most. He became the snitch, informing on his classmates to his father, the headmaster, and causing his father, the headmaster, to describe him as a born criminal.
At 19, Himmler went to Munich University to study agriculture. After graduating in 1923, a time of political insecurity and financial chaos, he couldn't find a job. With time on his hands, he dedicated himself to Nazi politics and studied the ideas of the secret Aryan cults.
Himmler's obsessed with the idea that there was an ancient master race that over the course of time had become corrupted, but that could be purified again, this race, could be strengthened again.
In 1929, shortly after Himmler became the leader of the SS, the Nazi Party got a huge boost from the Wall Street crash and the Great Depression, which were sweeping the world. Germany was already in severe economic trouble, and from this point, it went from bad to worse. The Nazis were more than happy to exploit the crisis.
Their pitch, in fact, their sort of endlessly recited slogan is Germany Awaken. So in a way, Germany had fallen asleep, if you want.
According to the Nazi propagandists, Germany needed to be awakened by a completely new kind of leader. Then, in the 1933 election, the party won the largest share of the vote, and Hitler was appointed Chancellor. He began to tighten his grip on the country immediately. Always at Hitler's side was Heinrich Himmler and the SS.
Adolf Hitler has set the goal for our generation to be a new beginning. He has been predestined by the German Karma to save the world's Germanic culture.
In the new Nazi state, Himmler's SS organization took control of national security and the police force. That was just the beginning.
Himmler had much bigger, more ambitious ideas for what the SS could become beyond a mere protective and police force. His ideas for the SS was that it should become the ideological elite of Germany.
The SS, which began as guards, as police, as thugs, suddenly was becoming molded into something a lot more elite, a lot more intense.
Never forget, we are a knightly order, from which one cannot withdraw, to which one is recruited by blood, and within which one remains body and soul.
Himmler's inspiration came from the medieval knightly orders, like the Knights Templar and the Teutonic Knights, and even King Arthur's mythical Knights of the Round Table.
But increasingly his ideas began to almost pick up on earlier ideas of chivalry or a knighthood, that the SS would be almost like the new super knighthood of Nazi Germany.
The diary of a young SS recruit reveals the enormous appeal of this new Nazi order of knights.
I was overcome with a burning desire to belong to these people. I wanted to escape from my childish, narrow life, and I wanted to attach myself to something that was great and fundamental.
Those deemed to be heroes of the SS were awarded the most highly prized honor of their knightly order: the Death's Head Ring.
I bestow upon you the Death's Head Ring of the SS. The runes opposite the Death's Head are holy signs from our past, with which we have been newly reconnected through the philosophy of National Socialism. Wear your ring with honor.
These rituals set you up to be more obedient, to be less critical of things they're doing. You get used to doing things without question, things that look kind of different or weird. So later on, if your group gets you to do something a little bit against your personal morals as they used to be, you're farther removed from that. You don't even remember when you had your own ideas of how to do things.
By 1935, Wewelsburg Castle was established as the center of the SS cult. There, the rituals could begin in earnest and in secret. The ceremonies were drawn from esoteric pagan beliefs. Beliefs that, according to the Nazis' skewed notions of history, were practiced in Germany thousands of years ago. This is the third Nazi gospel, the gospel of the pagan gods. In January 1933, the Nazis seized power in Germany. Adolf Hitler wielded ultimate authority. Always standing right next to him was Heinrich Himmler, leader of the Nazis' elite protection squad, the SS. Hitler was the political mastermind and demagogue. Himmler was the covert architect of a religious revival intended to replace German Christianity with paganism.
Himmler believed that the pagan gods were actual living creatures who had existed and perhaps still existed in the world and had magnificent superpowers. He believed in superpowers.
Heinrich Himmler was born in 1900. As a young man, he suffered extreme spiritual torment.
The period in our youth was a period of much inner difficulty, inner rejection and struggle. My father was, according to family tradition, a convinced Christian, but we didn't speak about religion, with the exception of discussions about the political perniciousness and corrupting effects of the Christian church, on which we were as one.
But when Himmler gained power, it was time for revenge.
The Nazis, in a nutshell, are trying to undo 2 millennia of Christian humanist history.
We must turn our gaze back to that golden time when our Nordic ancestors of the New Stone Age erected those mighty standing stones 3 to 4 millennia before Christ.
For Himmler, to be German meant to be an ancient German, an ancient pagan German. He believed in all of this quite sincerely. He was a New Age person of his time.
Himmler was in a supreme position, actually, to put these, in our views, perhaps crackpot ideas into practice.
In the middle of a forest in central Germany, these are the Externsteine, the outside stones.
These are 5 weirdly shaped columns rising up out of the forest. To the Nazis, this was a sacred spot to them. The church tried to turn it into a kind of Christian site for a while. There's carvings on the stones with Christian motifs. But to the Nazis, this was really a pagan site of pagan worship. It is the German Stonehenge for the most part.
According to Nazi researchers, this place was once the site of blood rituals.
Every esoteric system of religion recognized human sacrifice as indispensable in appeasing the divinity. What we call execution today is the last remnant of bloody human sacrifice.
Human sacrifice was definitely part of the whole worldview. Human sacrifice was perfectly acceptable. Civilizations had performed human sacrifice all over the world. The Aztecs, the Mayas. We have examples of human sacrifice in Europe and in Africa and in Asia. The shedding of this blood was something that the gods demanded and something the gods needed.
Himmler considered the area around the Externsteine the most authentically pagan part of Germany. Just a few miles away was Wewelsburg Castle, his new SS headquarters. In 1935, the pagan rituals began. They were designed by self-styled expert pagan Karl Maria von Willigut.
Karl Maria Willigut was a former Army officer who had been in and out of mental institutions and was sort of the archetype of the crazy guy with crazy ideas.
Willigut believed he was a reincarnation of ancient Aryan kings.
Willigut told Himmler that he was able to recall all of his incarnations going back 10,000 years. He had total perfect recall of every incarnation, which meant, of course, he also had total perfect recall of ancient Germany, of the German pagan religion at the time of the Paleolithic era and before the coming of the Romans.
And Heinrich Himmler, the second most powerful man in Nazi Germany, believed him.
Here was the guy who was going to help him recreate Nazi paganism because the guy could remember it.
Himmler recruited Willigut under the cover name of Weistor onto his personal staff. Willigut, Weistor, was able to supply his new master with examples of ancient Aryan runic spells, prayers, rituals, and of course, above all, his own memories of tribal life extending back through thousands of years. And this was absolute manna to Himmler. He felt he had a direct link to the ancient Germanic past.
Willigut persuaded Himmler he could think back 228,000 years to a world depicted in this German feature film of the 1920s, full of monsters and dwarfs and mythical creatures, and ruled over by Aryan giants.
This is something very common to the Nazi ideology, that there was a race of giants in the old days, and that the Aryans might have been giants, and that it was time for the Aryans to become giants again. Himmler was incorporating this into his religion of the SS.
It was all part of the Nazis' master plan to deny historical fact and return to ancient myth and legend, so setting the scene for the next Nazi gospel. Midsummer Day, 1935. Young SS men have gathered in a forest for a bizarre pagan ritual.
If you were to create a new religion and to root it in paganism, this is what you'd expect.
This is a solstice festival, an important celebration in the pagan calendar.
Solstice festivals were important to the Nazi ritual calendar, just like religious festivals are important to a Christian or any other religious calendar.
In pre-Christian times, the summer solstice festival celebrated the triumph of light over darkness and life over death. The winter solstice festival celebrated the beginning of the return of the light in the middle of the darkest time of the year.
Christmas, Easter, all of that's out the window. What you're doing is you're going back to the ancient pagan holidays, and the pagan holidays were sun-worshipping holidays.
The German people have once again turned away from Christian theories and Christian teaching, which has troubled Germany for more than 1,000 years and caused the racial decay of the German people and almost its racial death.
The participants in the ceremony are carrying garlands of leaves, traditional pagan symbols of fertility. As the solstice ceremony reaches its climax, they throw the garlands into the flames. The burning of the leaves symbolizes the rise of Germany from the ashes of its Christian heritage, as expressed in this poem, written for SS recruits to recite.
Struggle is the answer. Until Germany, unified once again, arises from her chains. Flames consume the hateful barrier which today still separates brother from brother. Flames light the hearts of us all and throw a blazing torch into the land.
The Nazis also put on festivals celebrating German tradition and culture. In this colourful and elaborate pageant, men are dressed as medieval knights. Marching alongside them are the modern-day Knights of the SS.
A lot of the sense of German national identity really is based on history, and the Nazis play on that, right? They want to sort of recreate, or they want to instill a new form of national identity, so they pick certain bits and bobs from the German past that sort of suits their particular gospel.
Close to Wewelsburg Castle, Himmler's SS headquarters, is the Teutoburg Forest. Here are the ancient standing stones, known as the Externsteine. And close by towers a huge monument to an ancient hero, Hermann, the Germanic warrior.
The Teutoburger Forest is full of ancient Germanic mythology. It was there that Hermann, the ancient Germanic warrior, defeated the Roman legionaries of Varus in 9 AD.
Hermann's emphatic victory over the invading legions of the Roman Empire meant that Rome was humiliated and never entirely conquered the Germanic tribes. This film, made in the 20s, celebrates Hermann's triumph. For the Nazis, Hermann represented the archetypal Aryan hero.
Hero worship, the admiration of the soldier, glorification of combat. There is a rich legacy on which the Nazis could draw.
But Nazi history lacked one crucial ingredient: evidence. So, finding some evidence to authenticate his version of events became an overriding obsession of Heinrich Himmler. He turned Wewelsburg Castle into the headquarters of a new SS unit, the Ahnenerbe.
Anybody that's seen Raiders of the Lost Ark knows about the Ahnenerbe. The Nazis who were searching for the Ark of the Covenant were pulled directly out of the archives of the Ahnenerbe.
If you were a scholar and you couldn't get a job at a regular university, you could probably find a job with the Ahnenerbe. All you had to do was toe the line and come up with the same ideas that Himmler wanted to hear. He wanted to hear about paganism. He wanted to hear about ancient religions and mystery cults. He loved all of that stuff.
The SS Ahnenerbe quickly became the center for all Nazi academics. These quasi-intellectuals aimed to challenge the traditional universities and their so-called Jewish-influenced ideas.
You must choose, and right now, whether you want to be with us or against us. Watch out. Come over to our side before it is too late.
Nazi scholars made detailed studies of what they said were authentic Aryan cultural artifacts. In particular, they fixed on the ancient inscriptions made up of symbols known as runes. Runes are found widely across Northern Europe and date from pre-Christian times. Their meaning is often a complete mystery. But the Nazis believed they could decipher the secrets.
Only runes still whisper what is true on this earthly sphere. The runes whisper to our folk, for they possessed it first. Rune knowledge is pounding in our hearts.
The Ahnenerbe's mission was to peddle Nazi theories and then do some archaeology to back them up. Their efforts took them all over Germany. Here, Himmler visits an Ahnenerbe dig near Berlin.
Have the following researched. Find all the places in the Germanic, Aryan cultural world where we can see evidence of the concept of a lightning bolt coming from a thrown hammer, as well as sculptures of the god Thor depicted with a small hand axe emitting lightning. Please collect all the pictorial, sculptural, written, and mythological evidence of this. I am convinced this is not based on natural thunder and lightning, but rather that this is an early, highly developed war weapon of our forefathers.
The Ahnenerbe quickly found exactly the right evidence to prove Himmler's case.
When we dig into the German soil, at points along the edge of a field, we find just a few hands' width beneath the surface precious copper, silver, and gold pieces. The quality of their workmanship, artistry, and classical beauty is difficult even for us modern, technologically very advanced men to achieve.
It was all complete nonsense. Himmler's Ahnenerbe were just feeding him the stories he wanted to hear.
This was Germany. This was the land of tremendous culture, tremendous science. And suddenly it went off the rails into this other area, this area of race science, believing in Atlantis, believing in mystical powers. This was something that's almost impossible for us to understand today, that the man who ran the most dreaded secret police force history had known. This guy believed in all of these impossible things. It's important for us to understand.
The archaeological adventures of the SS were only just beginning. Heinrich Himmler had set his heart on finding a legendary relic that has fascinated writers and scholars throughout 2,000 years of Christian history. The Holy Grail. In the 1930s, Wewelsburg Castle, in the dark heart of Nazi Germany, was the headquarters of the SS. Its leader, Heinrich Himmler, modelled his chosen warriors on the orders of medieval knights, like King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. Wewelsburg was the Nazi Camelot, and just like King Arthur had done, Himmler sent his men on a quest for the most precious religious relic in the world.
What is Wewelsburg Castle and a Camelot without a Holy Grail? So obviously Himmler was very serious about getting the Grail and installing it at Wewelsburg.
The Holy Grail is the cup said to have been used by Jesus at the Last Supper. Some legends also say it was used to collect drops of Christ's blood as he bled to death on the cross. It fascinated medieval Europeans, who believed the Grail possessed miraculous powers to heal the sick. It could also grant eternal life. To the Nazis, it meant something completely different.
The Grail was not the cup that Christ used at the Last Supper. It was not the cup that caught Christ's blood at the crucifixion. To Himmler, the Holy Grail was a pagan relic. It was an ancient cup, or perhaps an ancient stone, that had tremendous occult power.
Otto Rahn was a young German historian who was conducting research into the Holy Grail. His work came to the attention of Himmler's advisor on the occult, Karl Maria von Willigut. This charlatan was about to change Rahn's life forever.
Otto Rahn was making his way as a freelance writer when one day Willigut got in touch with Rahn, who was very interested in his book. Willigut brought Rahn to Himmler's attention, and Himmler was fascinated. Himmler asked to meet Rahn, and Himmler made Rahn an offer he couldn't refuse. How about becoming a full-paid author on the SS payroll? Rahn was a penniless freelance, and he took the bait. He started working for the SS.
Rahn journeyed to the ruined castle of Montségur in the mountains of the Pyrenees in southwest France. This was the last stronghold of a heretical Christian sect in the Middle Ages. They were called the Cathars. The Cathars were ruthlessly persecuted by the Catholic Church on account of their unorthodox beliefs. The legends surrounding them indicate they were also the secret guardians of the Grail.
There has